Hey, and welcome to True Crime Stories with Stephanie. Here we talk about murder, mystery, paranormal activity, and unsolved true crime cases. If you're a true crime junkie like myself, be sure to follow us so you never miss an episode. Today's episode's about Christopher Duntsch, aka Dr. Death. Have you heard of him? Christopher Daniel Duntsch. Well, he was a former neurosurgeon who's been nicknamed Dr. D and Dr. Death for gross malpractice resulting in death and maiming of 33 patients. 33 patients, y'all. Now, all this happened while working at hospitals in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And then Duntsch was accused of maiming 4 patients and then killing 2 others. Christopher Duntsch was born in Minnesota but spent most of his youth in Memphis, Tennessee. He's a graduate of Evangelical Christian School in Cordova, a suburb of Memphis. Duntsch initially had ambitions of playing college football, but was unable to catch on either Division III Millsap College or Division I Colorado State University. So basically, football was just not his thing. And by the time he returned home to attend Memphis State University, which is now University of Memphis, he had exhausted all his eligibility, so he decided to set his sights on becoming a neurosurgeon. Kind of random, but okay. Duntsch completed the MD, PhD in neurosurgery residency program at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, and then he completed the spine fellowship program there as well. And what proved to be kind of like foreshadowing of the things to come, he was suspected of being under the influence of cocaine during this time while operating during his 4th year residency. That should have definitely been a sign right there. But Duntsch was sent to an impaired physicians program and then was allowed to return to the residency program. He did complete his residency, having participated in fewer than 100 total surgeries. That's just a very small fraction of the 1,000 surgeries that most neurosurgery residents have to do. Duntsch began operating in Texas in 2010 when he moved to Dallas to work at Baylor Plano? Sorry if I said that wrong, y'all. Early on, he left a bad impression, especially with the fellow surgeons. One longtime vascular surgeon, his name was Randall Kirby, recalled that Duntsch frequently boasted about his ability despite being so new to the area. So that definitely was just a red flag, like, dude, you're new. Why? Do you feel like you just got it like that? And several of Duntsch's operations at Baylor ended with patients severely maimed. Maimed, y'all. Duntsch severed a major artery in patient Kelly Martin's spine, causing her to bleed to death. Okay, soon afterwards, Baylor forced his resignation. Duntsch then moved on to Dallas Medical Center in Farmers Branch, where he was employed for less than a week before he was dismissed by administrators after the death of another patient, Florella Brown, in the maiming of another married effort. Now, he severed Brown's vertebral artery, which ultimately caused her death from a stroke. I'll leave a picture here just kind of explaining what that is exactly, which ultimately caused her to die from the stroke. And a day later, he severed one of Effort's nerve roots during spinal fusion surgery and left surgical hardware in her back muscles, y'all. Like, what is going on? Longtime spine surgeon Robert Henderson performed the salvage surgery on Effort. He described Duntsch's work on her to a child playing with Tinker Toys on an etcher set. Okay, so he's basically just playing around in these patients, not doing anything but harm. Effort was left paralyzed as a result. There was no information available indicating what investigation the state licensing agency did, or if Dallas Medical Center notified the Texas Medical Board either. In December 2011, according to court proceedings, Duntsch emailed a colleague saying, "I'm ready to leave the love and kindness and goodness and patience, and I mix with everything else that I am and become a cold-blooded killer." Now, the that doesn't raise some red flags, I don't know what does, y'all. After leaving Dallas Medical Center, Duntsch received a job at an outpatient clinic named Legacy Surgery Center. Meanwhile, the Methodist Hospital in Dallas, where Duntsch had applied for a job, reported him to the National Practitioner Data Bank, which is basically a way for hospitals and other physicians to make reports on people, as far as like nurses, surgeons, hospitals, if anything's not right or going the way that it's supposed to. And even after these reports, Duntsch was hired by University General Hospital in Dallas in the spring of 2013. Soon after that, he severely maimed Jeff Guildwell after mistaking part of his neck muscle for a tumor. Look, I'm sorry, okay. I'm laughing because it's just that ridiculous. Like, this guy, it's like he didn't go to school at all. Severing one of his vocal cords, cutting a hole in his esophagus. Like, wow, y'all. Wow. Slicing an artery and leaving a surgical sponge embedded in his throat as well. Like, he was trying to kill this guy. This is murder. He was trying to murder this guy. Kirby was rushed in to repair the damage and later described what he found after opening Guildwell back up as a work of a crazed manic. Like, crazed manic, y'all. And this was quotes, crazed manic. He later told Guildwell that it was clear Duntsch had tried to kill him. Plain and simple. Guildwell was left with only one vocal cord and was partially paralyzed on his whole left side. Under heavy lobbying from Henderson and Kirby, the Texas Medical Board suspended Duntsch's license on June 26, 2013. And they revoked it. They ended up revoking it on December 6. Duntsch moved to Denver area, and his life ended up just going in this horrible downward spiral from there. He was arrested for DUI in Denver, taken for a psychiatric evaluation in Dallas during one of his visits to see his children, and was arrested in Dallas for shoplifting. So he was wilding out, y'all. He knew he messed up, basically, at this point. In March 2014, 3 former patients of Duntsch, Eford, Kenneth Fennell, and Lee Passmore, filed separate federal lawsuits against Baylor, the hospital, alleging that the hospital allowed Duntsch to perform these surgeries despite knowing that he was a dangerous physician, because people had been reporting it to the database. Remember, guys, and Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott filed a motion to intervene in the suits to defend the hospital, Baylor, citing the Texas legislator 2013 statute that placed a medical malpractice cap of $250,000, along with the state's removal of terms gross negligence from the definition of legal malice. The suit alleged that Baylor made an average net profit of $65,000 on every spinal surgery performed by Duntsch. So basically, the lawyers for the hospital was trying to say that the damage that he caused was not at the cap that it would have to be at for them to try and, take it to court. Now, the 2 doctors who have been seeing Duntsch's work, Henderson and Kirby, feared that Duntsch could move elsewhere and still theoretically get a medical license. Convinced that he was clear and a present danger to the public, they urged and pushed the Dallas County District Attorney's Office to pursue criminal charges. Now, the inquiry went nowhere until 2015, and that's when the statute of limitation on any potential charges was due to run out. Now, part of the problem was being to prove that Duntsch's actions were willful and intentional as defined by Texas law. After interviewing dozens of Duntsch's patients and their survivors, prosecutors concluded that Duntsch's actions were indeed criminal, and nothing short of imprisonment would prevent him from practicing medicine again. As part of their investigation, they obtained the 2011 email in which that's when Duntsch had emailed his colleagues saying he desired to become a cold-blooded killer. In July of 2015, approximately a year and a half after his license was revoked, Duntsch was arrested in Dallas and charged with 6 felony counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, his hands, and surgical tools. 5 counts of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury, and 1 count of injury to a child, elder, or disabled person. And that was for one of his patients that was considered to be an elder. The indictments were handed up just 4 months before the statute of limitation would run out. The last charge was for the maiming and paralyzing of Eford. Prosecutors put a high priority on that charge as it proved the widest sentencing range, and that's the one for the elder that we were just saying. And with Duntsch facing up to life in prison if convicted, prosecutors sought a sentence long enough to ensure that Duntsch would never be able to practice medicine again. During the trial, prosecutors called many of Duntsch's other patients to the stand in order to prove that his actions were intentional. According to his lawyer, Duntsch only realized how bad of a job he had done as a surgeon when prosecution expert told the jury about his many blunders on the operating table. He didn't even realize that he wasn't a good surgeon, y'all. That's wild. His defense blamed Duntsch's actions on poor training and control by the hospitals. After 13 days of trial, the jury needed only 4 hours to convict him for the maiming of Eford. On February 20th, 2017, he was sentenced to life in prison. All 4 hospitals that employed Duntsch have an ongoing civil case against them as well. So this was the story of Mr. Christopher Duntsch, Dr. D, aka Dr. Death. What are y'all thoughts below? During the trial, prosecutors called many of Duntsch's other patients to the stand in order to prove that his actions were intentional. According to his lawyer, Duntsch only realized how bad of a job he had done as a surgeon when prosecution expert told the jury about his many blunders on the operating table. He didn't even realize that he wasn't a good surgeon, y'all. That's wild. His defense blamed Duntsch's actions on poor training and control by the hospitals. After 13 days of trial, the jury needed only 4 hours to convict him for the maiming of Eford. On February 20th, 2017, he was sentenced to life in prison. All 4 hospitals that employed Duntsch have an ongoing civil case against them as well. So this was the story of Mr. Christopher Duntsch, Dr. D, aka Dr. Death. What are y'all thoughts below? I first heard about this story on a podcast last year, and I was just so intrigued. Like, I had never heard of a doctor or any kind of hospital or anything of this magnitude at all, of him just completely killing and maiming his patients. That's just bizarre to me. So if you guys have any suggestions on who you'd like me to cover, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Don't forget to follow us, share us with all your true crime friends and family. Stay tuned for our next episode. We're going to be talking about the